Welcome to Think Tech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidel. In our show this time, we'll visit the February meeting of the Harvard Club and get to meet Jerry Coffee for an intimate look at Hawaii's homeless dilemma. Jerry Coffee is the clinical director of the IHS, the oldest, largest, and most comprehensive human services agency focused exclusively on ending and preventing homelessness in Hawaii. In the world of homeless, he's a very important person. IHS provides shelter to over 300 single men, women, and families every night, serves over 700 meals per day, and is managed by over 100 staff members who also provide oversight for mental health, medical and outreach services, housing placement, and job training. Jerry is a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW. His career has taken him into crisis management, case management, private and group therapy practice, employee assistance services, and more. He is in the trenches on a daily basis and in a unique position to assess the condition of our society together and what the prospects are for making things better. Jerry has also developed mental health curricula for Kamehameha schools. Together with his wife, Alana, who is also a healthcare professional, he has provided statewide training to educators on violence prevention for DOE and private schools. All this qualifies him well to serve at IHS and to help us understand so many things we did not know. He is an important spokesman for IHS and what it does, and for the homeless, who they are and what they need. More than that, Jerry can tell us about the difficult and persistent psychological, social, legal, political, and economic problems that come with homelessness, and how we can deal with the open tragedy that undermines our society. Jerry spoke about IHS and his work with the homeless at a meeting of the Harvard Club a few weeks ago. ThinkTech was fortunate enough to be there. We know you will learn a lot about IHS and the homeless from listening to what he said.
I graduated from the University of Hawaii Manoa, the School of Social Work, in 2000. Let's see, a little bit about myself. I have a LCSW after my name, which means I'm a licensed clinical social worker. There's different levels of social work that you practice, and I'm the licensed clinical type. What that means is that I can charge third-party insurance. So in addition to my job and my work at IHS, I'm a therapist in private practice. My wife and I share a practice, and we see all different kinds of folks that come through for family and all different sorts of therapeutic issues. I have been with the Institute for Human Services for 5 years. This last November made 5 years. It is a great big organization, and I'm always grateful when I have the opportunity to meet, when I'm invited to come and talk about this issue. It is often an emotional issue. There are as many ideas about how to solve homelessness as there are articles that you'll read in a paper. It's a complex issue. It is a new issue to me. Prior to working at the Institute for Human Services, I never worked directly with homeless folks. I'd always worked in mental health settings, had always been a therapist in private practice, had a job working with United Health for 2 years and realized that that culture was not for me. Really got kind of, felt like I was missing direct practice, and so I left the Davies Pacific Center and I went to Evie Lay. But in my current role, I work 4 days a week. I facilitate all of the clinical services and all the clinical supports at the Institute for Human Services, which all told is about 140 employees. We're open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We have our men's service center or our men's emergency shelter, which most people think of as IHS, which is near Kmart, where you see the characters all hanging around outside. Our women's and family shelter is located on Ka'ahi Street, which is over more towards Costco. We also have a house on the Liki where we have 9 bedrooms, and we house at any given time between 10 and 15 vets. We have a contract with the VA. We just 2 months ago opened our new facility on Sand Island, which we're calling a housing navigation center. What else do we have? We also just opened a 9-bedroom home just off Middle Street that is intended to be a medical step down. It's a contract that we have with Queens Hospital to expedite folks out of the hospital who otherwise would leave the hospital AMA to return to the street and be homeless. Homeless folks, as you probably know, cost us a lot of money. They're frequently in and out of the emergency room, frequently in and out of psychiatric beds. So this is a kind of an experiment that we're trying with Queens Hospital to create an option for folks who would otherwise leave the hospital to have someplace else to go prior to going to the street. Why do they leave the hospital early? They leave the hospital early because they want to have a cigarette and they want to drink. And they can't do that at Queens. So they go in for infusion therapy often for their cellulitis, their diabetes, which gets infected, and they don't complete their course of treatment antibiotics. They go in for a lot of osteo and bone issues, but probably more than anything, a lot of wound care. There's a lot of MRSA, there's a lot of open wounds, and just wounds that just don't ever really heal. High level, that's what we're doing at IHS. We sleep about 400 people a night. We serve over 800 meals a day. Some myths about the Institute for Human Services. We don't require a picture ID, we don't require a TB clearance, and we don't require our guests to pay a fee. A lot of people will tell you that that's not true, but the truth is, if an individual cannot pay the fee, which we do charge because we think it's important for guests of our shelter to have a little skin in the game and put a little something down, it's $100 a month for singles and $130 for families a month. If they can't afford the fee, then they volunteer in exchange for paying the fee. Our men's shelter is about 200. Our women's dorm is usually between 80 and 90 single women, and our family dorm can go as high as 140, 150 people. At any given time, we'll have about 30 or 40 families in our family dorm. 80% of our families are working families who simply aren't able to afford the cost of living relative to housing. We have 2 primary care clinics, one at our men's shelter, one at our women's shelter. We have an outpatient drug and alcohol treatment program that is up and running at both of our shelters. We have psychiatrists, we have nurses, we have master's level therapists and case managers, we have bachelors, we have paraprofessionals. So we have a lot going on. We also have a housing program. We receive about 10 different kinds of federal subsidies, and we're able to link people to housing subsidies. About 80% of the people who come to IHS leave IHS for stable housing. We also have an employment and work training program for folks. My big push, my big thrust for folks coming to IHS, once we get them grounded, is they really need to be linked to work. Work is probably one of the most important predictors for folks, other than addiction and mental illness, relative to them not relapsing back to becoming homeless. We've been around for 38 years. We were founded by Father Claude Dutil, who himself was an alcoholic and also suffered from depression. He had a major depressive disorder. And he realized in his own calling as a minister or a father that there were a lot of people on the street who were under the influence of drugs and alcohol who were very vulnerable and needed some place to come to get off the street and to get help with their addiction. He has passed away. His wife, Bert Dutil, is still around. His oldest son is on our board of directors. And his wife, who lives on the mainland now, we're naming this new house that I was telling you about in her name. Tutu Bert's house is what we're calling it. So, you know, a big controversy during my time at the Institute for Human Services has been the city and county's rollout of sidewalk ordinances and sit-lie laws. It's a big conversation. We have a relationship and a contract with several hotels in Waikiki. We've been doing active outreach in Waikiki for 2 years. We have a shuttle that goes 3 days a week, takes people from Waikiki to our shelters. They can eat, they can take a bath, they can do their laundry, they can meet with the case manager, they can get some medical attention, and then the shuttle takes them back. That's been an enormously successful program. We've been able to get a lot of folks to come and see the shelter and understand the shelter. But in general, and the reason why this slide is up here, IHS took a controversial position on the sidewalk ordinances and the sit-lie laws, and I take full responsibility for that. Many people thought, well, shucks, you're an emergency homeless shelter. You should be more compassionate, and your idea about sit-lie and your idea about stored property ordinances should be something that reflects that you have a little bit of compassion for homeless folks. And the answer to that question is, we do have compassion for homeless folks. And to that extent, we don't believe that there should be laws that make it appropriate for us to walk past people on the sidewalk who are not oriented, who are psychotic, who are dehydrated, who have MRSA, their pants are full of feces. We also don't think that it's a compassionate thing to give families a message that it's appropriate to raise your children on the street. Kids who are school age every single day are waking up in Kaka'ako, every single day are waking up in the waterfront park. It's a little bit different. You got homeless camps in Waimanalo, you have homeless camps in Waianae, a little bit different. We see a lot of illegal activity. We see a lot of unsafe things happening in the Kaka'ako waterfront park area. So our position has always been, by all means, there should be what the city and county began to call a compassionate disruption. Any disincentive, what I've come to understand about homelessness is that folks relapse to homelessness several times, just like people relapse to substance abuse, just like folks who have mental illness relapse to their mental illness, people relapse to homelessness. So the things that we know that work for addicts and the things that we know that work for folks who have mental illness is you create incentives for maintaining their sobriety and maintaining their mental health, and you also have disincentives, things that would discourage that choice or that option. We've seen a lot of folks coming in to IHS as a result of the sit-lie. What happened, and we all watched it, we saw encampments just kind of relocate and do the pea into the nutshell kind of routine. And after a while, after about 8 months to 12 months of that, they said enough already and they started to come in. So the sit-lie laws have worked. I don't mean to pathologize or objectify homeless folks, but I wanted you to know that that is IHS's position. We don't believe that it's appropriate for a vulnerable, mentally ill, aged folks to be able to just continue to live and live and live and live without there being some response, some intervention. And for us, currently, that's the sit-lie laws and the stored ordinances. So how many homeless people do we have? And by the way, my apologies, this presentation is a little Oahu-centric. I don't speak to neighbor islands because I don't know enough about the neighbor islands. I could make some conjecture about homelessness on the neighbor islands. I know a little bit about homelessness on Maui. We're helping consult to open an emergency shelter there. We also took a portion of our funding to buy plane tickets for homeless individuals who wanted to return to the mainland. That was part of what Waikiki gave us, some funding to purchase airfare to fly folks home. We do that when we've researched that they have some place to go back to that is appropriate, where they have a good support system. We don't want to just perpetuate what we know can happen, which is just people sending their homeless people this way. Anyway, we took some of that money. We were working with some hotels on Maui and to fly some folks from Maui home. But each year across the country, there is something called the point in time count. It is a real-time count. Homeless providers, other mental health providers, Department of Health, public health type people, they fan out through a 72-hour period. They just count all the homeless people. It's one of the ways that the federal housing and urban development make their decisions about funding based on how many homeless folks are out there in various communities. So these are the areas that get counted on Oahu each year. So here you see the figures from point in time count from 2009 up to 2015. It's interesting, despite what we see, you would think that that number would be much higher. You would think there would be much more, greater difference between what we saw in 2010, for example, and 2015. And the reason why that number on Oahu, these are Oahu numbers, is not higher is because I believe that the homeless situation has become more visible. And I think we have our good friends from the Occupy movement to thank for that. People scratch their heads and they say, what's up with this camping on sidewalks? What's up with homeless people putting all their belongings and living on the sidewalk? Well, I came into the homeless arena right around the time when the Occupy movement set up on the corner of Thomas Square. A small kind sovereignty movement kind of co-opted the Occupy movement. And what we saw from that point on was an absolute explosion of people making the choice to go ahead and pitch a tent and be homeless in a tent on streets, on city and county property, on state of Hawaii property, on private property. So to me, that was a real turning point. So what these numbers basically are saying is that there aren't a whole heck of a lot more homeless people, but we're seeing them more. And another part of this conversation would be our brothers and sisters from the Pacific Island nations, our COFA folks. They recently have joined the camping. For a long time, they would double up. It was something that they just did. It was cultural. They would double up in housing with family members or friends. But as soon as they saw that the local population of homeless began to do that, they felt like that was their invitation to go and to do that as well. I have another slide that says exactly the same thing. When you see sheltered and you see unsheltered, sheltered means folks who live in an emergency homeless shelter or who live in a transitional housing program. The classic scenario would be that an unsheltered homeless person would go from the streets into an emergency shelter. The average length of stay at an emergency shelter in Hawaii for a single male or single female is between 4 and 6 months. The average length of stay for families in an emergency shelter is about between 6 and 8 months. Families, we were able to house them relatively quickly. So other sheltered environments would be transitional housing. Transitional shelters are places typically where people can live for 2 years. The idea is that in the span of that 2 years, they should be able to get themselves pulled together and make it the case that they can move into permanent housing. If I took a jar full of marbles and I dumped it on the floor right now, it'd be about the same process. It's a random snapshot of what's out there. Is it 100% accurate? No. Was there some grumbling in this last iteration of the point in time count? Yeah. It has to be organized very well. Does it give us a pretty, within a generalizable sphere of like what's out there? I think it does. Because most of the people who are doing the count actually know where to go to look. Because there are people that are known to the nurses, for example, from Waikiki Health, and I have an outreach team at IHS. It's 8 full-time staff. We're from Diamond Head to the airport, and we pretty much know where to go and find all of our people. What it doesn't capture are homeless in cars. Hawaii has more homeless people that are living in their cars than you would see on the mainland because it's too cold a lot of places on the mainland to live in your car. But I think it probably does as good a job as anything, and I don't know what the alternative would be, frankly. Sand Island gave us an opportunity to do that. Our Sand Island facility is 26 containers that are divided up into singles units, couples units, and several ADA units for folks who have disabilities. We're just in our second month of that facility. We're occupying 1 acre of a 5-acre parcel. Kurt Caldwell's asking me every time I see him, every chance I get, when can we expand? When can we expand? We want to make that place bigger. What more can we do? I agree with you. I think there are a lot of things, a lot of micro enterprise. I'm about up to here with hydroponics and fish and growing lettuce and all that. I've seen a lot of money just go right down the drain because a couple of people have a lifestyle preference that somehow gobbles up a whole bunch of funding that could pay for insulin for people who are dying on the streets. But there are some legitimate micro enterprises that I think really could. I'd like to make screens. Have you gone to City Mill and got a quote to get a new screen made? How hard is it to make a screen? It's not hard. So I agree with you. What I would say about Hawaii, methamphetamine is the drug of choice here. The drug of choice on most of the mainland right now is heroin and continues to be alcohol. The profile of a methamphetamine addict is very different from a heroin addict or an alcoholic. I'd much rather take a heroin addict and house them than a methamphetamine addict. Two very different types of individuals. And so there are some unique things to consider. The largest group of people in this state who fit that description are COFA. These are people coming from the Marshall Islands. It's inappropriate or incorrect, I think, to refer to them as immigrants, because immigration, as it has traditionally worked in the United States, means that you have a sponsor. You have actually somebody who has stepped forward and agreed to take responsibility for your well-being and, frankly, your care and feeding. The wave of folks who have come over from the COFA Federated Nations, they're coming without any of those supports, and they lack just about all of the fundamental skills that you would need to be a person who would get into the workforce. Can they be taught those things? Yes. Does that take money? Yes. Is that currently a priority for that particular population? No. That population is floundering. I grew up here. I watched all the different waves of immigrants come. When I moved here when I was 7, I had a bunch of friends in elementary school, at Barbers Point Elementary School, Filipinos. And then after that was Samoan, and after that Tongan, and after that was Laotian. We've had Mexicans come too. We've all watched. It's fascinating. I love Hawaii. I have not seen a group come to this state in the same way that the Federated Nation folks are coming, and they're getting virtually no help and support. And they need it more than any of those other populations that came before them, relative to having just frankly an orientation to the planet. They're coming from a subsistence living lifestyle, and no one has really made that a priority for them. On Oahu, again, 599 unsheltered adults with mental illness, 514 adults substance use disorder. I think those numbers are way low, to be honest with you. Same with HIV and DV. Those folks typically are in domestic violence shelters. So East Honolulu would be basically everything from Diamond Head to Makapu Point. And downtown Honolulu would be everything from Diamond Head to the airport. So what this is showing is where are the concentrations by number in terms of percentage. I'll give you a name and a number to call. If you have people that you see that you're particularly concerned about, that you think maybe need some outreach just in terms of medical and immediate intervention and support.
Jerry Coffey's kind of commitment doesn't grow on trees. And we're lucky to have him and IHS and all the other staff and volunteers who serve and save the homeless on our behalf. We need all the help we can get to deal with homelessness in our community, and they in turn need all the help they can get from us. The huge size and scope of homelessness in Hawaii is undeniable. We have far more than our fair share. The work of Jerry Coffee and IHS is therefore all the more critical. Hopefully, through his and its efforts, and the efforts of so many other individuals and organizations working to help the homeless, we'll be able to repatriate them from the hard life of the street and reduce the tragedy to more manageable proportions. Certainly it's in their interest, but it's also clearly in our interest too. Want to know more about the Harvard Club of Hawaii? Check out hchawaii.clubs.harvard.edu. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward. ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons, and then we broadcast our earlier shows all night long. And some people listen to them all night long. If you missed a show or you want to replay or share any of our shows, they're all archived on demand on thinktechhawaii.com and YouTube. For our audio stream, go to thinktechhawaii.com/radio. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links. Or better yet, sign on to our email list and get the daily docket of our upcoming shows. ThinkTech has a high-tech video studio at Pioneer Plaza in the core of downtown. We invite you to come down, see our studio, and be part of our live audience. Contact me at j@thinktechhawaii.com. Be a part of our civic engagement and raise your awareness on ThinkTech. Go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together. On March 17th, ThinkTech, in conjunction with the Grassroots Institute, will present a downtown forum lunch and panel program to explore ways by which the Native Hawaiian community can reach its cultural, social, and economic goals other than by political sovereignty. Our program is called Beyond Political Sovereignty, Pathways for Hawaiian Advancement. Join us and raise your awareness about the critical changes affecting and taking place in Hawaii. Be part of the conversation and sign up to attend on thinktechhawaii.com. Want to speak out about a community issue or event? ThinkTech invites you to come down to our studio and make a video at our Speaker's Corner. If you'd like to express yourself, contact me, Jay at thinktechhawaii.com. We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters. That wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it. For additional times, check out oc16.tv. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or a volunteer, a producer or an intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii. Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech family and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy, diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidel. Aloha, everyone.